Until recently, Mercedes-Benz didn't really have a compact car contender. Sure, it had the A-Class, but that was an upright, almost dumpy sort of mom's taxi. And it did have the B-Class, which was more like a compact MPV. But it certainly did not have a car that could compete against the Audi A3 or the BMW 1 Series. But that's all changed. Earlier this year, it launched the A-Class hatchback, and now it's added an A-Class sedan to that lineup. It's called the CLA, and the car behind me is particularly special because it's a CLA 45 AMG. Just the sound tells you that this CLA is indeed something special. There's an urgency to the exhaust note's rasp that crescendos as the revs rise and is punctuated with firecracker-style detonations between gear shifts. Those sonic cues and the way the speed-blurred Merc rushes past will tell you that this is a performance machine and one that demands to be taken seriously. Close up, it's also reminiscent of another Mercedes. Because the CLA shares its platform with the A-Class hatchback, you could argue that it's simply an A-Class sedan. But then if you look at the lines, the shapes, the contours, you can also see the influence of Mercedes-Benz's CLS Coupe, the large four-door saloon that can look quite ungainly. By comparison, this car looks wieldier and more athletic. As one would expect of an AMG badged model, this CLA is proudly endowed with the lower stance, the body kit, the bigger wheels and the louder exhausts that AMG engineered Mercedes cars have become renowned for. Frankly, the CLA 45 AMG benefits from the extra visual muscle. The big wheels emphasize the compact sedan's relatively long wheelbase and wide tracks so that the car looks poised and planted. Add the snarl of the larger air intakes, the bulge of the rear fenders and the deep rear apron with its large bore exhausts, and the CLA 45 AMG clearly means business. That business starts under the lightweight bonnet of the Mercedes, where you'll find an uncharacteristically small power unit, but one that remains true to the AMG performance ethos. The CLA 45 AMG might be an attractive sedan, but the real work of art is right here under the bonnet. It's an AMG handcrafted 2-litre 4-cylinder engine, twin-scroll turbocharged, producing 265 kilowatts of maximum power and 450 newton-meters of torque. The gearbox is a 7-speed dual-clutch design, and the drivetrain is all-wheel drive, front-wheel drive under normal circumstances, but moving the power to the rear axle when things get just a little bit hectic. You can initiate the CLA 45 AMG's launch control to get off the mark cleanly, and after just the slightest of hesitations, it surges off the mark with such intensity that you find your neck snapping back if you're not expecting it. The engine gets to the red zone quickly, and the first 2 gear shifts follow in rapid succession. As one would expect, the AMG treatment also includes a bespoke beefed-up sport suspension and large cross-rolled disc brakes. We said it of the A-Class, and it's true of the CLA as well. The interior is much more modern, much more inviting, much more comfortable than current generation Mercedes-Benz products. It really feels sporty, and this car, of course, a mix of leather and Alcantara, a nice grippy steering wheel, these shift paddles which are proper metal and really have a lot of tactile appeal to them, and an overall feel-good factor which suits the dynamic character of the car to a T. Most of the obvious comfort and convenience features are standard, but perplexingly, the aircon is a manual system rather than the expected automatic climate control. The seats are also manually adjusted. That said, the high-backed buckets are racy and supportive, while the dashboard is trimmed in high-tech carbon fiber. The recessed analog dials are easy to monitor, while the center console is home to a stubby gear lever combined with a drive mode selector and a switchgear for the infotainment system. The relatively short wheelbase means that rear occupants aren't quite as well looked after as front occupants, especially in the legroom department. The 470-litre boot ensures ample luggage space too. A panoramic sunroof can brighten up the somewhat somber cabin, but it doesn't do the exterior styling any favours when opened. Given its compact dimensions and the fact that it has 265 kilowatt of power on tap, you'd expect the CLA 45 AMG to be a really quick car, and it is quick. You're talking about a 0 to 100 time of 4.6 seconds, a top speed limited to 250 kilometers an hour, and given how quickly the car gets to that 250k mark, you know that without the limiter it would be a lot faster in a straight line. But in many ways, the real appeal of this car is not so much the speed. The car almost understates that, but it's really the handling. And whereas the front-wheel drive A-Class hatch, which we drove 6 or 7 months ago, was impressive in terms of stability, this car really feels planted. It is, of course, all-wheel drive, and when you start driving really quickly with intent, you can actually feel the way the car gets pulled into the line. It's very stable, it's very quick. The suspension, obviously, on the taut side, as one would expect, may be uncomfortably so for some, but this is an AMG car, and for that reason, it should feel visceral, alive, and very exciting. To savour that excitement, you owe it to the CLA 45 AMG to drive it in manual mode and to switch the stability control system to sport, giving the chassis some leeway before the electronics spoil the fun. You'll also need to find a nice stretch of quiet road, ideally with some twisties, because the high velocities mean this Mercedes needs lots of space. The chassis is a fine piece of performance engineering, ensuring that the Mercedes always feels controlled and confident. Yes, the suspension is on the uncompromising side of comfortable, especially on less than perfect road surfaces. But because the chassis feedback is unequivocal, the sedan never intimidates. The arrival of the new A-Class gave Mercedes-Benz a contender in the premium hatchback segment. The CLA extends that footprint and also provides them with a car that is perhaps more Mercedes-Benz-like than the hatchback itself. And I've got to say, from a styling point of view, probably more cohesive and more identifiable than the hatch. In A45 form, of course, it also has the power, the brio, and the presence to go with the Mercedes-Benz badge. But even by Mercedes standards, the 674,400 Rand price tag is a big ask for a compact, albeit talented, premium car. A superbly engineered best power in class engine, together with a tautly controlled chassis, ensure that the CLA 45 AMG feels every inch the performance sedan. All-wheel drive and a focused and comfortable cabin also score high marks, but tall gearing from third blunts the car's urgency, and the asking price will discourage some.